Hello, everybody. Thais Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim the Podcast. And we did it. We are officially on day 10 of the 10 days of worth. Woo! We made it. It has been quite a journey. I'm going to reflect my thoughts on this 10 days of worth journey on the podcast tomorrow for our regularly scheduled time. You know, my podcast episodes gets released every Tuesday. So a new episode will be released tomorrow, and I'll share some thoughts about this whole journey and how it's all, what I've been thinking about it as I've been listening to it because I recorded these videos back in the beginning of 2018. So there's a lot that's been going on in the past 2 years. So anyway, I can't wait to share all of my thoughts with you all. But this episode is one of my favorites because, in all of the previous episodes of the 10 days of worth, we've been problem solving, right? We've been understanding ourselves, cultivating awareness, deepening our ability to understand ourselves, to be with ourselves, to navigate ourselves. It's been very much focused on what's not working, right? The worthiness wound. But this episode is different because this episode is a reminder for all of us of how we are not defined by our pain. We are not defined by the hard shit. But we also get to be defined by our strengths, and we get to be defined by what's working and what feels good, and our immense capacity to overcome really big stuff. I mean, I'm continually inspired by the human condition, and inspired by the tragedies that humans overcome and find that they can still love, and that they can still experience happiness, and that they can still be radically human. And so that's what I love about this episode, and I can't wait for you all to listen. But before I get into it, just a quick reminder that doors are officially open for my signature group program, Worthy Women Rise. This will be my 9th cohort of leading this program. And the way I like to think of Worthy Women Rise is like a 5-month inner and outer quest, or like a sacred container where we're going to peel the layers of doubt and fears that's paralyzed you so that you can really step into reclaiming your innate worthiness and rising into the woman that you were born to be. The program includes so much of what we've explored over the past 10 days. I mean, we're going to be talking about the inner critic. We're going to be talking about perfectionism, comparitis. We're going to be talking about, of course, the worthiness wound and the model in which I created to understand the worthiness wound and how you can reparent yourself, your inner child work. I mean, there's so many elements that I've been speaking of on these 10 days of worth that are going to be specifically addressed in this program. The cool thing about this program is that you get support. You get support from me. I've been around the block. I'm finishing my master's in clinical psych in literally less than a month. I've been leading this cohort. I've been leading this group for over 4 years now. I mean, I just know a thing or two. I'm not an up-and-coming life coach that only has her own experience under her belt. Yes, I have a lot of experience under my belt, but I also have the training and the tools that are evidence-based and grounded in what works. One of the biggest fears that women come to me with is, I'm afraid that this isn't going to work for me and that I'm not going to show up. Well, here's what I have to say for all of you women who are thinking about joining Worthy Women Rise, but you're scared that maybe you're not going to show up or that it's not going to work for you. It's not possible for this to not work for you because you're not that special. And what I mean by that is, the amount of support and attention that you're going to get from me and from the other women make it impossible for these tools to not land in your heart. It will land. So maybe the real question is, are you ready for it to land? Are you ready for the radical change that is inevitable in participating in this 5-month experience? Because it is quite inevitable that things will shift, things will move, things will change. And it's also not possible for you to not show up, because I'm going to be holding this container, and it's so intimate and so delightfully small that I get to see each and every single one of the women who join this program. So you're not going to be forgotten. This is not about numbers. It's not like you're going to be one of 100 people and I may or may not have a time for your comment. I'm going to be there holding you, supporting you every step of the way. So in that, this program is going to support you in your unfolding because you are ready for that unfolding. The very fact that you are curious about this program means that you are already at the place where this program is going to do its amazing magic on you. You just have to trust that desire. You just have to trust that if there's a gut that's pulling you towards this, that means that this is going to be what you need. I get that there's a risk. Of course there's a risk. You're trying something new. There's always a risk. And we have to think about, is the risk of staying where I am worth it, or is the risk of trying something new worth it? Like, what is more important to me? And then trusting that pull within you that's guiding you towards the support that you're wanting. I'm not saying that is Worthy Women Rise, but I'm just saying whatever support, wherever you're feeling called to move towards, trust that pull, because it is going to lead you on incredible journeys. Okay. Without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. So we're going to be talking about, this day's episode. We're going to be talking about how to navigate the pesky fears, what fear is inviting you to do, and questions that you should be asking yourself when fear arises. And then part 2, we're going to be talking about why your desires should be trusted, and how to remember who you truly are and the power of your resilience. I love that I'm ending this 10-day journey with a real call for you to remember how brilliant you are, because I truly, truly believe that you are incredibly, incredibly brilliant. It's why I call my program Worthy Women Rise, and I address everyone in the program as worthy women, because we are already that. You are already worthy. Nothing needs to change in the world for you to be more worthy. Making more money is not going to make you more worthy. Getting the love that you want is not going to make you more worthy. Getting all the things, the accolades, all of that is not in any way, shape, or form a testament to your worth, because your worth is already here. It just needs to be reclaimed. You don't have to do anything different, but simply accept the fact that this is here and trust it, and then take action towards it. And all of that action taking is what I'm going to be teaching in Worthy Women Rise. Okay, so love the message of this episode. I can't wait for you to dig in. Let me know your thoughts at I am Thais Sky on Instagram. And one more thing, tomorrow's episode, I'm going to be answering your questions on worthiness. I want all of your questions. What questions do you have for me about what worthiness means, or what it means to be a worthy woman? Send it to me on email at info@thaissky.com, or message me on Instagram, or message me on Facebook. I'm in all of those places at I am Thais Sky, and I will be answering those questions tomorrow. Welcome to Reclaim, a podcast for women, by women, on conversations that matter. I am your host, Thais Sky, international speaker, teacher, and a certified life coach currently working to become a licensed psychotherapist in the state of California. Join me here every week as I offer thoughts and interviews on what it means to reclaim your humanness in this messy world. So today we're going to talk about what to do with the fears that come up with your desires. This is a part of the journey, the inevitable fears that may come up. Once you start taking whatever it is that you want to do, the playing big, the expansion, when you start wanting that, fears inevitably come up. Fears like, who am I to do this work? What if I let people down? What if this work is superfluous because there's already 30 million people doing this work? These fears get loud. They get they get into your brain. And I want to talk about what we can do with them. The other month, a couple months ago, I was talking to a friend about some fear that I had around something that I was doing. I forget what it was, but I remember this vividly. I remember her saying to me, well, if you have fears, Thais, they're going to manifest. Like, you're not going to get what you want if you have these fears. And I remember that felt like an arrow to my heart. And it felt at the moment like, oh my God, if I have these fears, then I'm not going to get this. But I have these fears, so that means I'm not going to get it. And I just spiraled. I spiraled. Now I can see how ridiculous that statement is. Do you hear that? Do you hear how ridiculous that statement is? That because you have fear, that means that you're not going to get what you want? That the existence of fears means that it's going to manifest and you're going to self-sabotage? Like, what? The existence of fear is the invitation that you're doing something different, that you're doing something uncomfortable, that you're doing something bigger than you've ever done before. It doesn't say anything about whether or not you'll succeed. It literally doesn't say anything. I've gone skydiving twice now. Every time I'm on that plane, I'm terrified. Right before he pushes me out of the plane, I'm terrified. I like falling to the ground, and I'm terrified and also exhilarated. And I haven't died yet, right? So does it mean the fear of skydiving means that I'm going to break my leg, that I'm going to die, that the parachute's not going to work, that I'm going to manifest that because I'm afraid No, this is a biological response that we have. There's nothing wrong with fear. I'm afraid that what we're doing is we're becoming afraid of fear. And so then we're making meaning that because fear exists, we're not going to succeed. And so then what happens? Then we actually perpetuate the fear. So the fear of the fear is perpetuating fear, not the fear itself, if that makes sense. We gotta stop with this shit. We gotta stop telling ourselves this. We gotta stop telling each other shit. If somebody comes to you and says, I'm afraid, that means they're human. You need this fear mechanism to survive. There's nothing wrong with fear. The invitation of fear is that you are taking care of something that means something to you. It means that you're stepping out of your comfort zone. It means that you're expanding. It means that you're growing. It's a sign that you're doing something exciting. Now, of course, if we act on the fear, of course, we're going to fall into a deeper spiral of that fear. Of course, that's the case. So we don't want to be listening. We don't want the fear to be taking the driver's seat. We don't want fear to be running our decision-making skills. We don't want fear to be the reason why we don't do what we want to do. But the existence of fear in and of itself does not mean that you are a bad person or that you don't have the fortitude or the manifestation tools and you're going to, fail and you're going to die jumping out of that plane. But we're saying this to ourselves. We're saying this to each other. I'm terrified of this launch. I've opened the door to Worthy Women Rise. Yay. And I'm terrified. I'm terrified what's going to happen. One never knows what happens in a launch. Anything could happen. I'm terrified. Does that mean that I'm not going to continue to promote this program that means so much that I've poured my mastery into? Does it mean that this program is not going to lead to complete radical transformation? Of course not. It means that I'm doing something big and something uncomfortable. The existence of fear is not the problem. Okay. So let's be gentle with ourselves here. If fear is coming up, it means that you're human. It means that you care. Now, there are certain things that we want to be thinking about when fears come up, right? When a fear comes up, we want to be asking ourselves the deeper questions. We don't want to take it for face value, right? We want to be asking questions like, is this true? Have I seen this to be true in myself? We want to be asking questions like, do I want to listen to this fear? Is this fear going to prevent me from, doing what I want to do? If yes, what can I do to mitigate this fear? How can I take care of myself? We talked, I shared a blog post about cultivating a deeper intimate relationship with our little girl. This is a great tool that we can use to navigate our fears. Another tool that I love tremendously is EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. I do it almost every single day. It's such a great way for me to move through my fears. There are tools, there are ways that we can move through our fears. Okay, so fear doesn't debilitate us, because I hear that happens to us. And what I'm inviting right now is let's approach the navigating of our fears, not from a place of, if fear exists, I'm not going to succeed, and shift it to, if fear exists, it means that I'm doing something bold and exciting. And now I have a responsibility to make sure that I tend to my fear so that it doesn't get in my way. It doesn't take the driver's seat and prevent me from going after what I want. And this is important. It's important that we develop a deeper relationship with our fears and that we know how to manage them, because our desires, I truly believe, are our greatest gifts. Our desires to make more money or to get uncomfortable, to take up more space, to go after a new project, to ask for a raise, to, fall in love. Like, these are all risky endeavors, and they're our gifts, and they're part of our soul. And when we fulfill our desires, we're fulfilling a karmic journey of learning. I believe that when we fulfill our desires and when we take action, it's not about the result in and of itself, but the journey that we go on is the journey of growth that is going to expand us and allow us to take up greater space and be more self-expressed and feel more at home within ourselves. That's why I call Worthy Women Rise both an internal and external quest, because there are internal quests like massaging the fear and understanding where that fear has come from and doing something about it so it's not debilitating. But it's also an external quest of really fulfilling our desires, really going after what we want, speaking up for ourselves, taking a stand for something that matters, being a change maker in the world. There's just something so important about our desires. This is something that I've really found to be my juice in my life, is that when I can trust my desires, when I can trust that internal shake within my heart that says, yes, it's usually a tiny whisper that says, just try it. Just do it. Take this risk. You don't know where the money's going to come from right now. You don't know what's going to happen right now, but just do it. Just take the step. Whenever I listen to that, I begin and embark on a journey that leads me to a deeper experience of myself. It teaches me things. It makes me understand how to nurture myself, because when we're honoring our desires, what we're truly honoring is our own needs. So when we're honoring our desires, we're tending to our space within ourselves. So if we're going to really tend to the gifts that we have that is waiting to birth forth, if we're going to tend to the space that we want to take up, the voice that we want to activate, the power that we want to harness, it's critical that we know what to do with the fears that come up. Okay, instead of banish them, instead of judge them, instead of say that it means that something bad is going on here. There's nothing bad here. This is biological, and we've got to learn how to take care of it. We've got to learn how to take care of that fear, or else that fear is going to keep us paralyzed. The fear of what if, and then we spiral into what ifs, and then we're like, oh my God, this is going to happen. I'm never going to make more money. I'm never going to do this. Oh my God, I'm going to blah, 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 blah. And I know that fear very, very well. And it can plague our hearts, and it can lead us into a spiral of anxiety, and then it paralyzes us. And then, yes, from that place, the odds of you, truly rising up is going to be much harder. Not impossible, but much harder, because you're debilitated by fear. So what can we do to start to tend to that fear? I recommend cultivating a relationship with that little girl, because usually she's the one that's afraid, not the adult us. I recommend doing EFT. I recommend journaling. Write down all of the fears that you have. Look at it in the face. And you can even ask yourself, has this been true for me in the past? Like if you're terrified to invest in yourself for something, right, and you're terrified that you're never going to make more money again, ask yourself, has this been true for me in the past? Has this ever happened in the past? If it has, then of course it makes sense that this fear is here. Then you're going to say, then of course. But am I willing to carry my past into the future, or am I willing to have a different future for myself? Am I willing to try something new? Am I willing to believe that this time it could be different? And if it hasn't happened in the past, then you can ask yourself, well, then why am I continuing to bring something that's not even true into my reality? Okay? Take care of your desires. Take care of that juicy part of you that wants to be born, that wants to move through you. Whether the desire is to go on a retreat, or the desire is to, ask that guy out or that girl out, or if that desire is to cut your hair, if that desire is, to say something to a bully that you've been allowing to bulldoze over you, let that desire move you. Make your life a living meditation and reverence to your heart. And then as fears come up, which it will, tend to them. The whole point of this video is to take care of your gifts. Take care of your desires. And here's the thing about these fears, like they come up, they scream loudly, and we get to honor them, and we get to listen to them. We can carve space for them. And then we get to ask ourselves, has this been true for me in the past? Have I let people down in the past? Yes, I have. Okay. And what happened? I lost that relationship. Okay. Then of course it makes sense that I'm feeling afraid now. Of course it does. And am I willing to do something different? Am I willing to believe something different? Am I willing to try something different? Like, if you let down someone in the past before, and, maybe this time you have a conversation with them before you engage in the activity, and you let them know, hey, listen, I'm afraid I'm going to let you down here, but this is what I'm going to do, and I want to be in conversation with you about it, right? Like, let's use our fear to inform us. Like, if you are afraid of putting your work out in the world because there's a bajillion people already out into the world, then okay, honor that fear. Ask itself, like, is it from the past? Maybe in the past you have tried putting your voice out into the world and, no one paid attention. Great. That's fine. Be with that little place within you that's resentful and that's disappointed, because that's a completely okay experience to have. And then you get to decide how you're going to do it differently. Okay, so maybe the way I put my voice out in the world in the past was this way. I'm going to try something different and see what this happens. right? Let's use our fear and things that happened in the past, not as a debilitating, like a wall that says that you can't do it again, but as an invitation to get creative and to try something different instead of trying the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. Okay, let's use the fear of whatever happened in the past, mold us into a deeper awareness, a deeper understanding of how we can carry out in the future in a different way. If you've launched something in the past and it didn't work, okay, so how can we launch it in a different way? Maybe you need to bring on some support, or maybe you need to try in a different platform, you know? But we only get creative like that if we can wrangle in the fear a little bit. If we can bring that fear down from the 90% to the 5%. And so do the tools like EFT, like meditation, like journaling, like doing yoga. Do the tools to move that fear through. So it's at a manageable point where we can use it to inform your creativity. Because the best creative stuff comes from limitations, and fear is a form of limitation. So there's nothing wrong here. You're not doomed. You're not doomed because fear is a part of your experience. I drove across the country by myself and I was afraid the entire time. Like, I was terrified. Like, when I was driving over the Rocky Mountains, I stopped in Denver. My parents flew to Denver to attend a wedding. And I remember my dad driving my car, and he said to me, Thais, your brakes are a little weak. Like, I'm not sure you're going to make it through the Rocky Mountains through Utah. And I didn't have time, unfortunately, to check my brakes. I didn't feel like, I've been driving my car for 7 years up to that point, and I didn't feel like my brakes were anything off, but I didn't have time to check. The entire time I was driving through the beautiful Rocky Mountains, I was terrified that, like, my car wasn't going to make it over the hill. Like, I was driving, like, super slow so that, like, if I started, like, sliding down or whatever, like, I drove on the right, I was, like, paranoid. I was terrified. Did it mean that I got into some accident and I'm dead? No, it doesn't. Like, fear doesn't always manifest itself. Like, let's stop with that silly shit. It's, like, ridiculous what we say to ourselves. Like, we're not some all-encompassing God that, like, we have one thought and it suddenly manifests. You know what I mean? Like, we're not that, I don't know, whatever the word is. We're not that in tune. We're not that clear channels that you can think something and then that happens, okay? It's the overall average collective of your beliefs that will influence your life. If fear comes up, it's okay. Tend to it, okay? Don't let it take over, or let it take over for an hour. That's also something useful you can try. Actually, now that we're speaking about it, that's something that I've done before. Like, I've allowed myself to be debilitated and crying on the floor and feeling sorry for myself and victim and sad and sorrow for, like, a specific amount of time. And I even say that to myself. Okay, I'm going to let myself mope because I'm disappointed and upset for a day. And then once that day moves, I'm like, okay, that's it. I gave myself a day. It's time to pick myself up and do something about it. So if your fear is debilitating you to the point where, like, you can't move, okay, give yourself a time frame. An hour, 5 minutes, half a day, a month, whatever it needs to be for you. The same goes for grief and sadness and anything. Give yourself a time limit. Say, okay, I'm going to allow myself to fully be in my victim and, like, fully feel sorry for myself for 10 minutes. And then I'm going to go and move on and do something about it. We can do this. Your desires deserve you to show up. Okay, it deserves you to move forward. It deserves you, I don't even know what that means. You deserve to fulfill your desires. I come to you today to talk about the idea that you are more than just your pain. So we've spent the past 20 days really digging in to every single way, well, not every, but many, many ways that the worthiness wound manifests in our lives and how we get tangled up in beliefs and comparativeness and perfectionism that keep us in spiral of inadequacy. And it's such important work. It's so important to look at the places that are broken, to look at the places that are feeling not so good, and infuse love into those places, infuse love through awareness, infuse love through understanding and compassion. And all of that is really, really good. But I don't want to end my 21 days of worth without at least mentioning that we are so much more than our pain. We are so much more than the challenges that came into our lives. We are so much more than what's broken within us. And sometimes we carry this energy of obsessing over where we're broken. Excuse me. Obsessing over where we're broken, obsessing over what's not good enough, obsessing over where we fall short to where we want to be. And that can lead us into feeling all sorts of shit about ourselves. But we've got to remember that we are so much more than this. We are so much more than this. The tool that I offered on day 19, I'm beginning to look at our worthiness wound, is a way that we can start to understand this concept of separating ourselves from the worthiness wound. So if you didn't watch day 19, I highly recommend you check it out. But the point is, it's like, we've got to start to remember. We've got to remember that we are more than our pain. And we're not doing this work of looking at our worthiness wound so that we can stay spiraled in our pain and so that we stay broken forever. No, we're doing this work so that we can reach a new level of healed, a new level of realizing that we are tremendous, that we are capable of anything we put our attention and thoughts into. We are capable of more than we think that we are capable of. We got this. We can do this. We are not defined by our pain. Your pain does not define you. It can certainly cause some limitations, of course, but we are all limited. And I believe that our limitations are God grace, because limitations invite creativity. Limitations invite grounded humanity. So as you're navigating your life, as you're thinking about your worthiness, as you're thinking about the places that you feel are inadequate and not enough, I want you to remember that you are so much more than this. That this is just one bleep. This is just one thing. And yes, it can feel so overwhelming sometimes. And yes, it can feel like we're so broken sometimes. But we are so much more than this. The other day I had a session with a client, and she's like, because we've been working together for about a year and a half. And she's like, Thais, your voice has gotten deeper since we started working together. And I was like, that's really interesting that you noticed that my voice got deeper. I wonder what that means. And I was thinking about the story of when I was a little girl. I was on the radio. My mom got featured on NPR for some reason, and I got to hop on and say, hi, I'm Thais, little 8-year-old me. And I remember the radio station sent us the recording of the interview, and I listened to my voice on radio, and I swore I thought I was a little boy. That just crushed my heart, that I didn't sound like a little girl, that I sounded like a little boy, whatever that means. But I decided I was never going to speak again. And that lasted a whole, 30 minutes, hour. But at that time, I was so devastated that I sounded like a little boy. And I think unconsciously that led me into believing certain things about my voice and believing certain things about my projection and my presence in the world. And when my client said that to me, I really had to pause and look at and think about, wow, I think she's right. I think my voice has deepened because I've settled. I no longer needed a defense mechanism of raising my voice and being up here to feel confident in myself. And it's interesting because then after that session, I walked inside and I was co-working with a friend, and we were talking about my journey this past 2 years, especially the journey of 2017. And she mentioned to me, she was like, your voice has become so powerful online. Your voice is really, blown up in my perspective. And that was so generous and thoughtful of her to say that to me. And again, it brought me back the same day, 2 people making comments about my voice. It made me think about my presence in the world and how I've been showing up. And the fact of the matter is, I haven't done any purposeful work around my voice. It's just a natural consequence of me just deepening into myself and remembering that the more that I do this deeper work, the more it manifests in ways that are surprising to even myself. So that's it. That's all I want to leave you all with today. It's super short. I want you to really think about the ways that you've defined yourself by your pain. And in many ways, that's important. I had to define myself as a binge eater for a long time for me to take responsibility of what was going on and to actually heal it. But then after a while, identifying myself as a binge eater was only causing me to believe that I was limited when I was starting to heal and move beyond being a binge eater. And in many ways, we like to attach ourselves to our pain because then, like I shared yesterday, we get to stay stuck. Or not yesterday, I think it was a couple of days ago. We get to stay stuck and we get to stay small. But we are so much more than this. We are so much more than our unworthiness. And within all of us is the catalyst for transformation. This stuff can feel so easy. It can feel so good. It can feel so nourishing. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be hard. And it is so possible within each and every single one of us. So as you're thinking about your life today, as you're navigating your challenges, if you're thinking about the places within you that you wish were better, that you wish, was easier, I just want you to remember that, okay? That you are more than your pain. You are so much more than any limitation. You are infinite in so many ways. And sometimes it's hard to bring that infinite space into a very limited human body, but it's okay. because as long as we can remember our infinite space, as long as we can remember the truth of who we are, then it's easier for us to remember not to get too tied up, not to get too attached to the human experience, in the sense of not needing to detach, disassociate, but from the place of, let's just take a deep breath here. Let's just play a little bit. And so I'm going to go spend the day. It's Saturday. It's a beautiful day here in LA. I'm going to go play. I'm going to go to brunch with friends. And I want you to play, infuse light into your life. Light as in playfulness and joy, and go out and watch something funny on Netflix. And just remember that you are so much more than any challenge that you have, and that you've got this. You are capable of this. You belong. You are worthy, you are potent, you are powerful, and may this be your permission slip to lighten up, to have fun, to not take things so seriously. At the end of the day, joy is God's way of healing, or the universe's way of healing comes through joy and laughter.
Thank you for listening to Reclaim the Podcast. This podcast represents the opinions of Thais Sky and her guests to the show. The content of this podcast are for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional psychological, psychiatric, or medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental disorder.